She was a broke black waitress working alone at midnight when 10 bikers, soaked and desperate, knocked on her door. Every place had turned them away. Her hand trembled as she unlocked it. What she didn't know, their president would bring 999 more to save her. At 11:47 p.m., with sleet hammering the windows like angry fists, Clara Bennett was the only soul left in Rosie's diner, counting a pathetic pile of $17.63 in tips. The neon sign outside, the one that was supposed to read Rosie's Diner in a cheerful pink, gave a final, desperate flicker, a dying heartbeat, before plunging the parking lot into near-total darkness. The failure of the light, a problem Mr. Patterson had been putting off fixing for months, was a bleakly perfect symbol for the state of her life. Clara didn't even look up from the worn laminate counter. She was too busy separating the damp $1 bills from the handful of coins, her fingers stiff from the cold that seeped in through the window seals. After splitting the meager pot with Ray, the cook who had clocked out at 9, this pile represented her entire Tuesday night earnings, less than minimum wage. Again. She was 28, but in the harsh fluorescent glow of the empty diner, she felt 50. Her strawberry blonde hair was pulled back in a bun so messy it looked like she'd done it in her sleep. Her uniform, a faded blue and white striped dress, was 2 years old and fraying at the seams, a constant scratching reminder of her failure to move on. The bags under her green eyes weren't just from this shift. They were the accumulated debt of someone working 3 jobs just to keep her head above the dark, cold water of her life. Rosie's was supposed to be temporary, a way to pay the bills for a few months after her car died and her community college fund evaporated. That was 2 years ago. Now it felt permanent, like a life sentence served 1 cup of burnt coffee at a time. "Great," she muttered, shoving the pathetic pile into her apron pocket, the coins clinking with a dull, mocking sound. She grabbed the nearly empty coffee pot and began her closing routine. Wipe down the counter, the chrome stools, the ketchup bottles. Stack the heavy vinyl-backed chairs onto the tables. Mop the floor, starting from the back. Each movement was automatic, worn into her muscles by 1,000 other nights exactly like this one. The slosh of the mop, the squeak of her worn sneakers, the howl of the wind, they were the only sounds in her world. Bang, bang, bang. The sudden percussive pounding on the glass door made Clara jump so violently she nearly dropped the coffee pot. Hot, stale coffee splashed onto her hand, stinging. Her heart leaped into her throat. Through the rain-streaked window, she could see shapes. Big shapes, at least 10 of them, all wearing dark leather, standing in the merciless downpour. They were massive, silhouetted against the weak streetlight, looking more like bears than men. Every instinct screamed at her to pretend she hadn't heard. Don't move. Don't even breathe. It was almost midnight. The diner was officially closed. These were clearly bikers, the kind of people her mother, in her small Ohio town, had warned her about her whole life. The kind who meant trouble. The kind who preyed on girls working alone at night. She imagined the headline, "Broke Waitress Robbed, or Worse." She froze, her hand gripping the mop handle. Just go to the back room, lock the door, call the police. But then she saw one of them, a younger man, shivering so violently his whole body seemed to be vibrating, his arms wrapped around himself in a useless hug. Another was helping an older guy who looked like he could barely stand, leaning heavily on his friend's shoulder. They weren't banging threateningly, she realized. They were knocking desperately. The sound wasn't anger. It was a plea. Clara's hand hesitated on the deadbolt. The smart thing, the safe thing, the thing any other person would do, was to point at the closed sign and go back to mopping. The thing that wouldn't get her robbed. But Clara had never been good at doing the smart thing when someone looked that cold. She'd spent too much of her own life feeling desperate, standing on the outside of warm, lit places. She took a deep breath, dropped the mop, and walked to the door. Her hand trembled as she unlocked the deadbolt. The click sounded impossibly loud in the empty diner. She opened the door a crack, the wind tearing it from her grip and slamming it open with a crash. 10 men stared at her, their faces streaked with rain and road grit. They looked as shocked as she felt. "We're closed," she started to say, but the words died in her throat as she got a full look at them. They were completely, utterly soaked through, shaking from a cold that seemed to come from their bones. Their leather jackets, plastered to their bodies, dripped in puddles onto the welcome mat. Their bikes, massive Harleys, were parked haphazardly in the lot, chrome gleaming dully under the storm. "We know," said the man in front. His voice was rough, like gravel, but not unkind. He was tall, maybe 50, with a gray-streaked beard, and eyes that had seen things, a lot of things. The patch on his jacket read, "Ironhawks MC," with President stitched underneath. "We've been to 4 places. Nobody would let us in. Storm came out of nowhere and the highways flooded ahead. We just need to wait it out somewhere warm. We can pay." Clara looked past him at the others. A mixed group, young and old, different races, but all wearing the same exhausted, desperate expression. One guy, the one she'd seen shivering, couldn't have been older than 25. His teeth were chattering so hard she could hear them from 6 feet away. "How long have you been riding in this?" she asked, her voice quiet. 2 hours, the president said. He glanced back at his men, his expression hardening, as if preparing for her rejection. "Look, if you're scared, we understand. We'll move on." "Get inside before you all catch pneumonia," Clara interrupted, pulling the door wide. "Quickly, before the wind takes it off the hinges." The bikers stared at her like she'd just spoken Mandarin. You're letting us in?" the young one asked, his voice cracking with disbelief. "I said quickly, didn't I? In, now. Track water, I don't care, but get out of that storm." They filed in like obedient, dripping school children, leaving a trail of puddles with every step. The diner, which had felt so cold and empty, was suddenly filled with the smell of wet leather, rain, and sheer human presence. Clara locked the door behind the last man and immediately started pulling down chairs from the tables. "Sit anywhere. I'll get the coffee going and see what's left in the kitchen." "Ma'am," the president said, water dripping from his beard. He'd taken off his gloves, and his knuckles were raw. "We can pay. We're not looking for charity." Clara turned to face him, her exhaustion momentarily replaced by a flicker of the spirit she thought she'd lost. She put her hands on her hips. "Did I say it was charity? You'll pay for food if you order it. Coffee's free tonight because I am not charging for basic human decency. Now sit down before you flood my entire diner." A small smile tugged at the corner of the president's mouth. "Yes, ma'am." As they settled into booths, shedding gear and rubbing their hands together, Clara fired up the big coffee maker and headed to the kitchen. Ray was long gone, but she knew her way around. Eggs, bacon, toast, simple stuff she could handle. Within minutes, the smell of breakfast filled the air, mixing with the sound of rain and the low, grateful murmur of voices. She brought out the first pot of coffee, and the way they looked at those steaming, cheap diner mugs broke something deep inside her chest. You would have thought she'd handed them liquid gold instead of 60-cent-a-pound grounds. "How much do we owe you?" the president asked as she poured. "For coffee? I told you." "It's not just the coffee," he said, his eyes serious now, all traces of his rough demeanor gone. "For opening your door when nobody else would. For treating us like people instead of problems." Clara felt her cheeks warm. "I'm just doing what anyone should do." "But they didn't," said the young biker quietly, his hands wrapped around the mug. The last place, a gas station. The guy threatened to call the cops just for us asking to stand under the awning. Said we looked like trouble. Well, Clara said, refilling his cup. You look like trouble that needs hot coffee and dry socks. There's a difference. That got genuine laughs, a warm sound that filled the diner. For the next 2 hours, Clara cooked, served, and even talked with them. She learned their names. The president was Marcus. The young one was Danny. The older guy, who was finally getting some color back, was called Pops. They were riding from California to a memorial service in Pennsylvania. A brother had died. They were family. I'm sorry for your loss, Clara said softly, setting down plates of scrambled eggs and bacon. Thank you, Marcus said. He glanced at the others, then back at her. What's your name, miss? Clara Bennett. Well, Clara Bennett. He raised his coffee mug slightly. The Ironhawks don't forget kindness. You remember that? She smiled, thinking it was just nice talk. Kind, but talk nonetheless. I'll remember. Now eat before it gets cold. By 2 a.m., the storm had passed, leaving a clean, quiet world behind. The bikers paid their bill for the food, not the coffee, though Clara tried to argue, and left a tip that made her eyes water. $80, folded neatly under a coffee cup. $80, more than 4 times her entire night's earnings. As they filed out, each one thanked her personally, their ma'ams and thank yous rumbling with genuine respect. Marcus was the last to leave. He paused at the door, studying her face like he was memorizing it. You work here every night? He asked. Most nights, Clara admitted. Why? Just wondering. He pulled something from his vest pocket. It was a business card, thick and black, with a phone number and the Ironhawks logo, a silver hawk with its talons out. You ever need anything, you call this number, day or night, understand? Clara took the card, confused by the intensity in his gaze. Okay. Good. He smiled, a real, warm smile this time. And Clara, check your phone in the morning. As they mounted their bikes, Danny, the young one, lagged behind for a second. He raised his phone, and with a quiet click, he snapped a photo. A photo of Clara, standing in the diner doorway, framed by the warm light, her hair a mess, a tired but genuine smile on her face as she watched them go. Before she could ask what he meant, he was gone. The rumble of 10 Harleys starting at once shook the diner windows, a thunderous, defiant sound that faded into the night. Clara stood in the doorway, the $80 tip clutched in one hand and the strange business card in the other, watching their taillights disappear. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. The photo that Danny had quietly taken was already uploading to every biker forum and social media group on the East Coast. Clara woke at 9 a.m., to her phone buzzing like an angry hornet, not with a bill collector, but with hundreds of Facebook notifications tagging her in a photo she didn't know existed. She'd only been asleep for 5 hours, having dragged herself home from the diner around 4 a.m, the rumble of the Harleys still echoing in her ears. Her tiny studio apartment was cold. The radiator, broken for the 3rd time this month, clanked uselessly in the corner. She groaned, reaching for the phone on her nightstand, her eyes still closed, bracing for an alert from her bank about her overdrawn account. Probably her landlord with another excuse about why repairs would take just a few more days. But when she squinted at the screen, her brain couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. Notifications. Hundreds of them. Facebook, Instagram, even her barely used Twitter account, all exploding. Friend request from Mike Torres. Friend request from Sarah Chun. Friend request from James Rodriguez. You've been tagged in 47 posts. You have 328 new followers. What the hell? Clara sat up, pulling her thin blanket around her shoulders. She was wide awake now. She opened Facebook, her thumb shaking slightly. Her breath caught in her throat. The most recent tag was a photo of her from last night. She was standing in the diner doorway, framed by the warm light, her hair a mess, a coffee pot in her hand. She was smiling, a tired but genuine smile, at someone just off camera. She looked exhausted, but human. Real. She didn't remember anyone taking a picture. Then she read the caption, posted by someone named Danny Hawk Ryan. "This is Clara from Rosie's Diner outside Pittsburgh. When 10 of us showed up soaking wet at midnight, every other place turned us away. She opened her door, made us coffee, cooked us food, and treated us like family. Remember this face. Remember this kindness." And then, the line that made her shiver. The words that echoed what Marcus had said to her in the diner. "The Ironhawks don't forget. Neither should you." She had thought it was just talk. Nice talk, but just talk. The post had been shared 4,200 times. In 5 hours. Her hands started shaking. The comments were flooding in faster than she could read them. "This is what brotherhood means. Heading to Pittsburgh next week. Definitely stopping by." Finally, someone who gets it. "Bikers are people, too. My club is in Ohio. We're making a detour this weekend. God bless this woman. We need more Claras." She scrolled through dozens more, her heart hammering against her ribs. These weren't just random people. These were bikers, clubs, and regular folks from all over Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, Maryland, even Texas and California. And they were all talking about her. About Rosie's Diner. Her phone rang, buzzing violently in her hand. The caller ID was the diner's landline number. "Hello?" Clara answered, her voice raspy from sleep. "Clara, oh, thank God!" It was Jennifer, the morning shift waitress. Her voice was an octave higher than usual. "Where are you? You need to get down here, like, right now." "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" Clara's mind flashed to a fire, a break-in. "Wrong. Nothing's wrong. Everything's insane. There are people everywhere asking for you, and some bikers just... Clara, just get here, please." The line went dead. Clara threw on yesterday's jeans and a clean sweater, not bothering with makeup, her mind racing. She grabbed her keys and ran down the 3 flights of stairs from her apartment, her old Honda rattling to life in the cold morning air. What did Jennifer mean by everywhere? It was 9:30 on a Wednesday morning. The diner was never busy on Wednesday mornings. She'd be lucky to see 10 customers before noon. But as she turned onto Route 22, her foot slipped off the gas pedal. The parking lot was full. Completely, totally full. It wasn't just full. It was overflowing. Cars, pickup trucks, and at least 20, maybe 30 motorcycles were lined up like soldiers, gleaming in the bright morning sun. More vehicles were parked along the shoulder of the highway, people walking toward the diner. And the sign. The big neon Rosie's Diner sign. The one that had been flickering for months. The one whose R and S had been dead for weeks. It was glowing. Bright and steady. A perfect warm pink. Like new. Clara pulled into a spot at the far edge of the lot, her hands still shaking on the steering wheel. She walked toward the entrance in a complete daze. That's when she noticed them. The Ironhawks. All 10 from last night, plus a few more she didn't recognize, standing near their bikes, drinking coffee and greeting people like they were the official welcoming committee. Marcus spotted her immediately. "There she is!" he called out. His voice boomed across the lot, and several bikers turned to look, their expressions open and friendly. Clara approached slowly, completely bewildered. What are you all doing here? What is going on?" Marcus grinned, looking far more rested than he had any right to after 5 hours of sleep. We came back at sunrise. Figured we owed you more than a tip. You fixed the sign, Clara said, staring up at it, unable to look away. It was beautiful. Danny's an electrician, Marcus explained, clapping the young biker on the back. Danny blushed. Took him 20 minutes. We also patched that leak in the roof above the kitchen. Pops noticed it last night. And we replaced the rubber seal on your walk-in freezer. That thing was bleeding cold air like a sieve. Clara's throat tightened. She looked at these big, intimidating men who were now tinkering with the diner's faulty wiring like it was their own garage. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did. Marcus's tone was firm but kind. What you did last night, that meant something. You didn't just give us shelter, Clara. You gave us dignity. That's worth more than a new sign. But all these people? Clara gestured at the packed parking lot, at the line forming outside the door. Ah. Danny stepped forward, looking slightly guilty. So, I might have posted that photo last night. It sort of went viral, on every biker forum and group on the East Coast. By morning, everyone was talking about it. Talking about what? About you, said a woman's voice. Clara turned to see a biker in her 40s, with kind eyes and a leather vest covered in patches from a club called Sisters of the Steel. About the waitress who showed us that kindness still exists. Half these people are from local clubs. The other half are just folks who saw the post and wanted to support you. Clara looked at the diner again. Through the windows, she could see every single booth filled. People standing in the aisles. Jennifer rushing around with plates, her face a mask of panicked joy. The place was absolutely, positively packed. This is... She couldn't find the words. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. This is just the beginning. Word travels fast in our world. By tonight, everyone from here to the coast will know about Rosie's Diner and the woman who runs it. I don't run it, Clara said automatically. I just work here. Maybe that'll change, Marcus said with a knowing smile. Now you'd better get in there. Jennifer looks like she's drowning. As if on cue, the diner door burst open and Jennifer practically screamed, Clara, I need you! I need you right now! The bikers laughed, a low, warm rumble. Clara managed a shaky smile, clutched her apron, and hurried toward the chaos. The rest of the morning was a blur. By 11 a.m., Clara had lost count of how many times she'd refilled the coffee urns. Her feet ached, her back screamed, and she had never, ever been happier in her life. The diner was a madhouse. Every booth, every table, every stool at the counter was occupied. Jennifer worked the left side of the room while Clara took the right, both of them moving in a synchronized, frantic dance of plates, coffee pots, and order tickets. The cook, Ray, had shown up 3 hours early after Jennifer's panicked phone call, and even he, a grizzled veteran of 30 years in kitchens, looked shell-shocked at the wave of orders coming through the window. 2 more breakfast platters, 1 burger medium well, and a stack of pancakes, Clara shouted, pinning the ticket to the line. That's the 3rd pancake order in 10 minutes, Ray shouted back, but he was grinning from ear to ear. We're going to run out of batter. Then make more, Jennifer called out, balancing 4 plates on her arms like a circus performer. The energy in the room was electric. It was loud, chaotic, and joyous. Bikers laughed and swapped stories across tables with local families who had come to see what all the fuss was about. The 3 women from Sisters of the Steel were showing Clara pictures of their cross-country trip on their phones. The air smelled like coffee, bacon, and motor oil, a strange combination that, Clara decided, worked perfectly. And the tips. God, the tips! Clara had a growing pile of cash in her apron pocket that felt almost criminal. A $20 bill for a $12 breakfast, $50 on a $30 tab. Around noon, one gruff, enormous biker with a beard down to his chest paid for his $15 meal with a crisp $100 bill. I need to get you change, sir, Clara said, fumbling for the register. No, you don't, he said, his voice a low, friendly rumble. He gently pushed her hand away from the register. You keep it. Kindness ain't cheap. Is this real? Jennifer hissed during a brief, miraculous moment when they both reached for the coffee pot simultaneously. Tell me I'm not hallucinating. If you are, we're both having the same hallucination, Clara said, laughing breathlessly. The old mason jar they used for a tip jar, the one that usually held maybe $10 and some change on a good day, was overflowing with 5s, 10s, and 20s. Just when she thought the lunch rush might be tapering off, she noticed a man in pressed khakis and a button-down shirt standing near the door. He held a professional camera and looked distinctly out of place. He wasn't dressed like a biker. He approached her carefully, dodging Jennifer. Clara Bennett? Yes, she said, balancing a tray of empty mugs. Tom Chun, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He extended his hand. I saw the viral post this morning and had to come see for myself. This is incredible. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Clara's mind reeled. The newspaper? I'm really busy right now. Just 2 minutes, I promise. He was already filming, his cameraman panning across the packed room. How does it feel to go from a quiet night shift to this? Clara looked around at the beautiful chaos, the packed parking lot visible through the window, the bikers laughing and eating, the repaired sign glowing outside. A lump formed in her throat. Honestly, it feels like a dream. She gestured helplessly at the scene. Last night I almost didn't open that door. I was scared. But they were just people who needed help, you know? And now they're helping me back. All of them. What do you think this says about the biker community? Tom asked, pushing the microphone closer. Clara met his camera lens directly. That they're family, that they take care of their own, and that they don't forget kindness. I think the world could learn something from that. That's perfect, Tom smiled. Can I get a shot of you with some of the bikers? Before Clara could answer, Marcus appeared, apparently having overheard. You heard the lady. We're family. Come on, everyone. Photo time. Suddenly, Clara was surrounded by leather and smiles. Bikers crowded around her. Men, women, young, old, all wearing different club colors but united in this moment. Someone, to her shock, lifted her up onto their shoulders, and she yelped in surprise, then laughed as cameras flashed and phones went up. To Clara, Marcus shouted, raising his coffee mug in a toast. The entire diner roared back, to Clara! Tom Chun captured it all, his camera recording every second. Within an hour, the video would be on the Post-Gazette website. As Clara was carefully lowered back down, dizzy with joy and disbelief, Jennifer appeared at the door, waving frantically. Clara, we've got 10 more orders and someone's asking if we do catering. Clara laughed, a real belly-deep laugh that felt like a release from years of tension. Coming, she called. The day finally wound down around 9 p.m. Clara, Jennifer, and Ray were sitting at a table in the back, too exhausted to move, their feet throbbing. Mr. Patterson, the diner's owner, who had shown up around noon and quietly watched the chaos from his office, emerged with the receipt totals. Clara, he said, his voice hushed, almost reverent. Come here a minute. She followed him into the tiny, cluttered office. He showed her the final tally for the day, printed on the long receipt tape. As the day ends, Clara counts the till. $4,300, more than they usually make in a week. Mr. Patterson, the owner, looks at the numbers with an expression Clara can't read. Not just gratitude, but something more calculating. Friday morning started not with applause, but with a certified letter. Clara tore it open, and the words "Notice of Rent Adjustment" made her blood run cold. The past 48 hours had been a whirlwind of pure, unadulterated joy. Thursday had been almost as busy as Wednesday. The Post-Gazette article, complete with the triumphant photo of Clara on the biker's shoulders, had brought in a new wave of customers. Curious locals, families, even a few city council members who wanted to be seen supporting the Kindness Diner. The tips had been astronomical. Clara had, for the first time in her adult life, paid her rent early. She'd even bought groceries, not just ramen and a sad box of cereal, but fresh vegetables and a small steak. That morning, she'd arrived at the diner at 8 a.m. to find Jennifer already there, buzzing with energy. Mr. Patterson was in his office, the door closed, talking animatedly on the phone. That calculating look she'd seen on Wednesday night had never really left him, but it seemed to have been replaced by sheer, giddy excitement. The diner was humming. Even before the doors opened, there was a sense of promise in the air. Then the mailman came. He handed Jennifer a clipboard to sign for the certified letter, a grim-looking white envelope with a green tab. "Certified," Jennifer said, her brow furrowing. "Looks official. Probably just some tax thing from the state." She handed it to Clara. "You're the one everyone wants to see. You open it." Clara took the letter, a strange knot tightening in her stomach. It was addressed to Rosie's Diner, Atten owner-operator. She slid it open with a butter knife from the counter. The diner was warm, the smell of fresh coffee brewing, but a chill ran up her arms as she unfolded the single crisp page. "Dear tenant, in accordance with Section 12B of your lease agreement, please accept this as formal notice of a rent adjustment effective November 1st, 2025. This adjustment reflects the increased property value due to heightened business activity, significant media exposure, and the subsequent rise in fair market value for commercial properties in this zone." She skipped the legal jargon, her eyes scanning down to the numbers. Current monthly rent, 3,200 Zarsal. Adjusted monthly rent, 7,500 Born. Clara read it 3 times. Each time the numbers blurred, her brain refusing to process them. $7,500. It wasn't possible. It was a typo. It had to be. "What is it?" Jennifer asked, seeing Clara's face drain of all color. "Clara, you look like you've seen a ghost." "The rent," Clara's voice came out as a strangled whisper. She couldn't feel her hands. "The landlord, he's more than doubling it." "He's what?" Jennifer grabbed the letter. Her eyes bulged. 7,500? Can he do that? That's insane! That's robbery." "Apparently," Clara said, her voice numb. She flipped to the second page, a photocopy of their lease agreement. A yellow highlighter stained the page, drawing a box around a dense paragraph, Section 12B. The legal language was thick as mud, but the meaning was clear enough. The landlord retained the right to adjust rent with 30 days' notice if significant changes in business operations, property usage, or local market valuation occurred. The bell above the diner door chimed its cheerful, welcoming ring. Clara looked up and felt her heart sink into the floor. It was Robert Carrile, the landlord, mid-50s, with a suit so expensive it looked out of place in the daylight, let alone in their diner. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back, and he wore a smile that had always reminded Clara of a shark. All teeth, no warmth. He usually sent a low-level assistant to handle business. His personal appearance was never, ever a good sign. "Clara!" He approached the counter, his arms outstretched as if they were old friends. Congratulations on your incredible success. I've been watching the news coverage. Truly, truly heartwarming stuff. It's not every day you see a little place like this get so much positive attention. His cologne was overpowering. A sharp, spicy scent that seemed to suck the smell of coffee right out of the air. Clara held up the letter. Her hand was shaking, not with fear, but with a sudden, cold rage. I just got your letter, Mr. Carilli. Ah, yes. His smile didn't waver. He glanced at the letter, then back at her, his eyes twinkling with false sincerity. I wanted to deliver it personally, but my secretary, bless her, beat me to it. I wanted to discuss the new terms in person. Make sure we're all on the same page. There's nothing to discuss, Clara said, her voice low and tight. You're doubling our rent. Not your rent, dear, Carilli corrected smoothly, his tone patronizing. The building's rent. I believe Mr. Patterson is the leaseholder, not you. He glanced around the diner, which was still empty, save for two bikers who had just walked in and were settling into a corner booth. They were Marcus and the quiet one with the glasses, Tony. But given your, celebrity status, I assumed you'd have a vested interest in keeping this wonderful place operational. Marcus and Tony had stopped talking. They were watching, their coffee cups halfway to their mouths. This is because of the news coverage, Clara said. It wasn't a question. You're capitalizing on what happened. I'm adjusting to fair market value, Carilli corrected again, that slick smile still in place. Clara, you must understand. This property, which, let's be honest, was a struggling C-list location 2 days ago, has tripled its daily revenue. The exposure alone is worth tens of thousands in free advertising. Surely you understand basic economics. The value of the leasehold has gone up. My terms simply reflect that new value. I understand greed, Clara said, the words out of her mouth before she could stop them. Carilli's smile finally cracked. The warmth vanished, leaving something cold and flat. Watch your tone, Miss Bennett. I am offering you the courtesy of advanced notice. The lease agreement, which Mr. Patterson signed, is ironclad. I could simply wait 30 days and implement the increase, and there's not a thing you could do about it. I came here today, as a courtesy, to see if we could work something out. Work something out? Jennifer snapped. What does that mean, work something out? Like you'll only raise it twice as much? Carilli ignored Jennifer, his eyes locked on Clara. Well, he pulled a sleek silver business card holder from his suit jacket. I happen to have connections with several large-scale restaurant management companies. They are very interested in acquiring successful, high-visibility establishments. If Mr. Patterson was finding the new rent challenging, I could facilitate a deal, a sale, one that would be mutually beneficial, of course. Clara's hands clenched into fists on the counter. You want us to sell, so you can get a cut. I want everyone to benefit from this windfall, he said. Don't be naive, Clara. This attention? It won't last. Viral stories fade. In 6 months, you'll be right back to serving truckers and a few locals, but the new rent will still be due. If you sell now, while you're hot, while your story has value, everyone walks away rich. The answer is no. The voice came from the office doorway. Mr. Patterson stood there, his face red, his hands trembling. He was a small, quiet man, usually worried and stooped. Now he stood taller than Clara had ever seen him. Mr. Patterson, Carilli said, his smile returning. Good. You're here. I was just explaining the new market realities to your staff. She's not just staff, Patterson said, walking to the counter. And this diner has been in my family for 38 years. My father built this counter with his own hands. I'm not selling it. Not to you, not to some corporate vultures. Carilli's face went smooth and hard. He shrugged, a casual, dismissive gesture. A pity. Such sentimentality. Well, then you'll pay the new rent, $7,500, due on the 1st, or you'll find a new location. He tapped his business card on the counter. My offer stands, should you regain your senses. He turned to leave, the bell above the door chiming. Then he paused, his hand on the door, and looked back. Oh, and Mr. Patterson, you might want to read Section 14C as well. It covers unauthorized modifications to the property. Clara's blood froze. All those repairs, Carilli said, his lip curling in a sneer as he glanced toward Marcus and Tony. That new sign, the roof patch, the freezer seal, technically those are all violations of the lease. I could charge you for restoration costs on top of the new rent. He was gone. The door chimed cheerfully behind him, mocking the silence he left in his wake. The diner was dead quiet. Jennifer looked like she was going to be sick. Mr. Patterson leaned against the counter, his brief burst of bravery gone, looking 10 years older than he had 5 minutes ago. Clara felt the hope of the last 2 days crumble, turning to ash in her stomach. He had them. He had them trapped. The very kindness the bikers had shown, the repairs they'd made out of gratitude, Carilli was now twisting into another weapon to use against them. Then, the scrape of a stool. Marcus stood up from his booth and walked over, his expression dark. He nodded at Mr. Patterson, but his eyes were on Clara. How much is he gouging you? Wordlessly, Clara handed him the letter. Marcus read it, his jaw tightening with each line. His face, usually open and friendly, hardened into a mask of controlled fury. He handed the letter to the man beside him, the quiet one with the wire-rimmed glasses. Tony. Tony read the letter. He didn't get angry. He just got very, very still. He read the legal jargon, his eyes moving quickly, then read it again, slower. Section 12B, Tony said, his voice quiet and analytical. Broad discretion, vague language. He's leveraging the media exposure. Can he do that? Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Tony looked up, and for the first time, Clara saw the sharp, focused intelligence behind the glasses. Technically, yes. The clause is vague enough that he has the right to make the argument. The problem is, he said, turning to Mr. Patterson, challenging it would mean court, and court means time and money, which he probably knows you don't have. He's right, Mr. Patterson said miserably. Even with the new business, $7,500 a month, it would eat every cent of profit. We'd be broke in 2 months. He's forcing me to sell. No, he's not, Marcus said. He stood at the window, arms crossed, watching Carilli's expensive car pull onto the highway. He's testing us. He's seeing if we'll roll over or fight back. How can we fight? Clara cried, the frustration and anger boiling over. He has a lease. He has lawyers. All we have is a busy diner. No, Marcus said, turning around. His smile was gone, replaced by something predatory. He has a lawyer. We have Tony, and he thinks he can bully you because you're small and vulnerable. He's about to learn you're not alone. He turned to his companion. Tony, you still practice? Tony, the quiet biker, adjusted his glasses, a wry, almost invisible smile touching his lips. Corporate law, mostly. Mergers and acquisitions. But I know contract basics. Good, Marcus said. He pulled out his phone. Mr. Patterson, do you have a copy of that original lease in the office? Get it. Tony needs to review every single page. Clara's head spun as Marcus put the phone to his ear, his thumb flying across the screen, sending texts. Jake, it's Marcus. Yeah, we've got a problem. No, not that kind. Landlord's trying to squeeze the diner. The kindness diner. Yeah, we're going to need to mobilize. Mobilize? Clara asked, her voice shaking. What does that mean? Marcus covered the phone, his eyes cold and hard as steel. It means this Kareli character just made a very big mistake. The next day, a black Mercedes glided into the lot, parking in a way that blocked 2 other cars. The man who stepped out wore a Rolex that caught the light, and his smile was colder than the landlord's. It was the Saturday lunch rush, the busiest the diner had ever been. After the shock of Kareli's visit, the diner's back office had transformed. Tony had spread the lease agreement across the small desk, marking it up with a red pen, while Marcus worked the phones, his voice a low, steady rumble. The bikers had been a constant, reassuring presence ever since, sitting in their corner booth, drinking coffee, and simply watching. Their quiet support had taken the edge off Clara's fear, replacing it with a simmering, defiant anger. But this new arrival felt different. Kareli was a familiar kind of predator, a greedy, small-time tyrant hiding behind a contract. This man looked like he ate men like Kareli for breakfast. He was the facilitator Kareli had mentioned, the corporate vulture coming to pick at the wound. The man, maybe 40, with perfect teeth and the kind of deep tan that didn't come from Pennsylvania in October, bypassed the "Please wait to be seated" sign, ignoring Jennifer's call of, "Sir, there's a line." He walked straight to the counter, where Clara was ringing up an order, the cash register drawer open. "Clara Bennett," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was smooth, practiced, like a television host's. "There's a 30-minute wait, sir," Clara said, not looking up, busy separating a 20 from a 50. "I'm sure there is." He placed a heavy, linen-finished business card on the counter next to her hand. "I'm Derek Hutchkins, with the Hutchkins Development Group. I've been following your story." He smiled. "Quite inspiring." Clara glanced at the card. The logo was sleek, minimalist, and screamed money. "Thanks. If you're here to eat, the line starts over there." "Actually," he said, ignoring her point, "I'm here to talk business. Is there somewhere private we could speak?" "I'm working," Clara said flatly, handing the customer his change. "As you can see." "This will only take a moment." His smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "It's regarding a very generous offer for this property." Clara felt her stomach tighten, the same cold dread from Kareli's visit returning. "The diner's not for sale." "You haven't heard my offer yet," he said, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more confidential. "I don't need to. We're not interested." She turned to the next customer, but Hutchkins didn't move. He leaned closer, his expensive cologne, a sharp scent of sandalwood and citrus, cutting through the familiar diner smell of coffee and bacon. "$500,000, he said quietly, just for her to hear. Clara's hand froze on the register. $500,000. The number hung in the air, sucking the sound out of the room. $500,000. It was life-changing. It was enough to pay off Mr. Patterson's mortgage, buy a new building, send her back to school, fix her car, and get her teeth fixed. It was a fantasy number. Hutchkins sensed her hesitation, that flicker of shock, and pressed his advantage. "That's more than this place is worth by any metric, Clara. The building needs a new roof. The wiring is ancient, the land is small. But the story..." He gestured around the packed room. "Now that has value. The brand, the Kindness Diner." He leaned in further. "With your blessing, we could build something modern here. A flagship location, a franchise." He smiled, as if sharing a wonderful secret. "We'd even call it the Clara Bennett Diner. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? You could stay on as a consultant, a brand ambassador, put your name on it. You'd never have to wipe down another counter again." "My name?" Clara repeated slowly. The idea felt disgusting. It made her skin crawl. She looked away from him, out at the room he was dismissing. She saw Jennifer, red-faced and sweating, but grinning as she dropped off a check. She saw Ray, visible through the kitchen window, flipping burgers and shouting at the order tickets in his element. She saw the 3 college students in booth 4, sharing a plate of fries and studying for finals. She saw the old couple by the window, the ones who had been coming here every Saturday for 20 years. And she saw the corner booth. Marcus, Tony, and 2 other bikers, all 4 of them watching Hutchkins with a silent, predatory stillness. This wasn't a brand. It wasn't a story to be franchised. It was a community. It was a home. Clara turned back to Hutchkins, her spine straightening. The fog of the $500,000 offer cleared, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the diner's noise. "The answer is no." Hutchkins's polished smile thinned. "You're making a mistake." "I don't think I am," she said, closing the cash register drawer with a firm thud. "That rent increase really dropped on you?" he said, his smooth voice hardening, losing its practiced charm. "You think that's the end? There will be more. Property taxes will get reassessed. Suddenly you'll need permits for everything. The city inspectors will be here every week. The system will bleed you dry, Clara. I'm educating you. I've been developing properties like this for 15 years. Small businesses like this don't survive once they attract this kind of attention. I'm offering you a way out, a golden parachute. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a reality check," he snapped. The scrape of a stool on the linoleum floor cut through the tension. Marcus stood up. The movement was casual, unhurried, but it commanded the attention of the entire room. He was a big man, and as he walked toward the counter, he seemed to get bigger. Hutchkins, who was used to being the most powerful man in any room, took an involuntary step back. His eyes flicked to the president patch on Marcus's vest, and for the first time, his corporate composure cracked. "The lady said no," Marcus said. His voice was even, almost conversational, but it carried an absolute authority that Hutchkins's money couldn't buy. "Time to leave." Hutchkins straightened his suit jacket, recovering his smile, though it looked brittle now. "Of course." He looked past Marcus, back at Clara. "But think about my offer. I'll leave my card." He slid it across the counter. "Call me when you change your mind, and you will." "I won't," Clara said, meeting his gaze. "We'll see." He turned and walked out, his expensive shoes clicking on the floor. Clara watched through the window as he got into his Mercedes, and the moment he sat down, he pulled out his phone, his thumb tapping angrily at the screen. Marcus approached the counter, the tension leaving his shoulders. "That guy's bad news. Worse than the landlord." From the corner booth, Tony held up his phone, on which he'd clearly taken a photo of Hutchkins. "Got him, and his card. I'll run a background check. Hutchkins Development Group. Sounds familiar." "Good," Marcus said. He looked at Clara, his eyes searching her face. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. That was intense." "It's going to get more intense," Marcus warned, his voice grim. "Guys like that, who are used to buying whatever they want, they don't take no for an answer on the first try." He was right. The day ended in a blur of orders and adrenaline. It had been another record-breaking Saturday, $4,800 in sales. But the encounter with Hutchkins had left a toxic residue, a metallic taste of fear in the back of Clara's throat. Marcus and the others had offered to stay until she locked up, but she'd insisted she was fine. "I'm just counting receipts and prepping for tomorrow," she'd said, forcing a smile. "Go home, get some rest. You've been here all day." They'd left reluctantly, around 9:30. By 10 p.m., the diner was empty and dark, save for the small fluorescent light above the back office. Clara sat on the worn stool, the door open to the dark diner, counting the stacks of cash and sorting the credit card slips. The silence of the empty building felt heavy, watchful. She heard the front door open, the click of the lock tumbling. Her heart stopped. "We're closed," she called out, her voice high. "We know." The voice was unfamiliar, deep, guttural. Clara's head snapped up. Two men stood in the narrow doorway of the office. They weren't bikers. They weren't customers. They were big, bigger than Marcus, and they wore suits that looked like they were straining against their shoulders. One had a shaved head and dead, flat eyes. The other had a neck as thick as a tree trunk. "Diner's closed," Clara repeated, her voice steadier than she felt. Her hand, hidden by the counter, slid toward her phone, sitting on the desk next to the pile of cash. "You need to leave. Now." "Just came to have a friendly conversation," the bigger one said, walking further inside. His eyes swept the office, dismissing the money, and landed on her. "About that very generous offer Mr. Hutchkins made this afternoon." "I already gave my answer," Clara said, her fingers finding the side of her phone. "See, that's the thing," the bald one said. He wasn't in the office. He had stepped back into the main diner. Clara heard the thud of the front door's deadbolt being flipped. He was locking them in. "Mr. Hutchkins is a very generous man. When he makes an offer like that, people usually take it. He doesn't like his generosity refused." Clara's thumb found the power button on the side of her phone. She pressed it 3 times, fast, in the sequence Marcus had drilled into her. Click, click, click. No screen, no sound, just a silent, GPS-tagged text sent to Marcus, Tony, and 3 other Ironhawks. "Emergency. My location." "Are you threatening me?" she asked, trying to keep her voice level, trying to keep them talking. "We're clarifying the situation," the bigger one said. He was close now, looming over the low office counter, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of whiskey on his breath. "This whole area is about to see major development. Property values are going to skyrocket. You can be part of that, or you can be a problem." "Problems tend to have accidents," the bald one added, his voice almost bored, as if he were discussing the weather. "Broken pipes, faulty wiring, electrical fires, things like that. Awful easy for that to happen in an old dump like this." "Get out," Clara said, her voice shaking now. "Get out now." The bald one laughed, a short, sharp bark. "Or what? What's that in your hand? Your phone?" He scoffed, stepping back into the office doorway. "You call your biker friends? They're not here, sweetheart. It's just you and us, and a very simple business decision. Think about it," the bigger one said. He tapped a thick finger on the counter, just inches from the stack of 20s. "Really think. Is this rundown dump worth getting hurt over?" They didn't wait for an answer. They turned, as one, and walked out. The bald one unlocked the front door. They left as suddenly as they'd arrived, their presence a lingering poison in the air. Clara heard their car engine, a heavy, powerful V8, start and crunch over the gravel of the parking lot. Her legs gave out. She slumped onto the stool, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone when it buzzed, the screen lighting up, blindingly bright in the small office. It was Marcus. "Got your signal." "Where are you?" "Clara." She fumbled to type, her fingers stabbing at the keys. "Office. They just left. 2 men." "They threatened me, Marcus. They threatened the diner." The reply was instant, 3 words that were more reassuring than 1,000. "Stay there. Lock the door. We're coming. We're—" 20 minutes later, though it felt like an eternity, the front door burst open. Not with a key, but with the force of a boot, splintering the frame. Marcus and 5 other bikers burst in, fanning out, checking the kitchen, the bathrooms, their faces grim. Marcus had used a key she didn't even know he'd had made to get through the first lock, but the deadbolt had stopped him. "Clara!" he yelled. "In here!" she cried. He found her in the office, still on the stool, shaking. She told them everything, her voice trembling as she relayed the conversation, the words fires and accidents. Marcus's face was stone. He and the others swept the diner again, checking every window, the back door, the seals on the walk-in, even the roof. After ensuring she was safe and the building was secure, he pulled out his phone. His thumb flew across the screen, sending a flurry of texts. "What are we doing?" Clara asked, wrapping her arms around herself, the cold of the night finally seeping into her bones. Marcus looked up from the screen, his eyes hard and cold as polished steel. "We send a message of our own." When Clara arrived at 6 a.m. Sunday, the parking lot was full, but it wasn't customers. It was a silent, organized wall of leather and chrome, at least 80 motorcycles, parked in perfect rows, with their riders standing guard. She hadn't slept. After Marcus and his men had arrived the previous night, they had refused to leave. Two bikers, men she'd never seen before but who wore the Ironhawks patch, had parked their truck to block the now splintered doorframe. Marcus had simply said, "We'll watch the place till morning. Go home, Clara, get some sleep. You're safe." But sleep hadn't come. She had sat on her lumpy couch, the business card from Hutchkins on her coffee table next to the black card from Marcus. One represented a threat wrapped in money. The other, a promise of protection that she was still struggling to comprehend. Marcus's final words from the night before, "We send a message of our own," had echoed in her head, a grim promise. She'd expected a phone call, maybe a lawyer's letter. She had not expected this. Her little Honda sputtered as she pulled into the employee spot behind the diner. The sun was just beginning to touch the horizon, painting the sky in pale shades of orange and purple. The morning air was cold and tense. The bikers weren't loud. They weren't rowdy, drinking or swapping stories. They were standing in small groups by their bikes, silent, organized, and unmoving, like a military unit at dawn. Their motorcycles were arranged in perfect diagonal rows, a gleaming metallic fortress that completely surrounded the small diner. They were a small army. She recognized the Ironhawks vests, but there were others. Devil's Disciples, Road Warriors, Steel Riders, patches from Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. This was Marcus's message. Clara got out of her car, her legs unsteady. The sheer, silent power of the scene was overwhelming. This was not a random gathering. It was a disciplined show of force. As she walked toward the front entrance, a path cleared for her. Men nodded, their faces grim and respectful. "Ma'am." "Morning, Clara." Marcus stood near the front, arms crossed, a steaming styrofoam cup of coffee in his hand. He looked like a general reviewing his troops. What is all this?" Clara whispered, gesturing to the 80 men and the wall of machinery. "Security detail," Marcus said calmly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "We're rotating shifts, 2-hour patrols, 4 men at each corner of the property. The rest will hold here. There will be brothers here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until this situation is resolved." He took a sip of his coffee. "Nobody threatens our family. This is the message." Clara looked at the men, at their hard faces, at the vests that society saw as a threat. And for the first time since this whole thing began, for the first time in her life, she felt unequivocally, completely safe. The knot of fear that had lived in her stomach since those 2 thugs walked in last night simply evaporated, replaced by a profound, staggering wave of gratitude that made her eyes burn. "You can't just stop your lives for this." "This is our life," Marcus said simply. "Brotherhood. It's not just a word we stitch on leather. Go open your diner, Clara. We've got the perimeter. As if on cue, a black Mercedes glided up the road. It slowed, the driver clearly confused by the wall of motorcycles blocking the highway entrance. It was Derek Hutchkins. He parked on the shoulder, and he and his two enforcers from last night, the bald one and the one with the tree trunk neck, got out. They had come to escalate their threats, to find a terrified waitress alone and ready to break. They stopped dead. Hutchkins stared, his arrogant, polished expression collapsing into one of plain shock. His two thugs looked visibly uneasy, their hands twitching, as if suddenly realizing their role as muscle was laughably inadequate. 80 sets of eyes turned toward them. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody revved an engine or shouted a threat. There was only the cold morning air and the absolute, terrifying silence of 80 men staring, their collective message hanging in the air. You are not welcome here. You are not a threat here. You are nothing here. The silence was more threatening than any words could have been. Hutchkins, his face pale, stared at the scene for a long, frozen moment. This was a force he couldn't buy, a power he couldn't bully, a system he couldn't sue. This was a parallel world he had blundered into, and he was completely, utterly outmatched. He didn't say a word. He got back in his car, his movements stiff. His enforcers followed, practically scrambling into the back seat. The Mercedes performed a clumsy, panicked K-turn on the highway and sped away. Marcus turned to Clara, a small, grim smile touching his lips. I think he got the message. The rest of the week was a blur. The diner's back office, once a forgotten closet of old receipts, became a war room. The bikers' 24-hour presence continued, a rotating guard of leather and chrome that became the new, comforting normal. Customers came and went, their initial shock at the biker army turning into a kind of local pride. The story evolved. The bikers weren't just customers anymore. They were protectors. Inside the office, the counteroffensive began. Tony, the lawyer, sat at the small desk, his laptop open, his phone to his ear. He filed a formal multi-page dispute of the rent increase, citing Section 12B's vague language as predatory and unenforceable. He filed it with the county court, ensuring it was a public document. Another biker arrived on Monday, a man named Reese, who wore a Road Warriors patch and, as it turned out, was a commercial real estate agent from Philadelphia. Marcus called me in, he said, shaking Clara's hand. He set up his own laptop. I've pulled comps for every commercial property in a 10-mile radius. Carrile's new rent isn't just high, it's 3 times the current market rate. It's not an adjustment, it's a constructive eviction. No judge will see it any other way. So we can win in court? Mr. Patterson asked, his voice trembling with a hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel. Eventually, Tony said, adjusting his glasses. But court takes months, years. We need to hit him now. That's when they launched the petition. Marcus had it printed. Save the Kindness Diner. Tell Robert Carrile to stop punishing community. They set up a folding table in the parking lot, right next to the diner entrance, manned by 2 bikers. The petition went viral in a way the original photo never could have. It wasn't just a feel-good story anymore. It was a fight. Local families signed it. The nurses from the nearby hospital signed it. The construction crew working down the road signed it. Tom Chun, the Post-Gazette reporter, caught wind of it and ran a follow-up story. Kindness Diner fights for survival against predatory landlord. The local news, which had celebrated Clara's kindness, now had a villain. They ran segments with headlines like, Community Rallies Behind Waitress Turned Hero. They interviewed Mr. Patterson, who, with Tony at his side, calmly explained that the rent hike was an attempt to force them out. They interviewed customers who expressed their outrage. By Thursday, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette ran a blistering editorial. When greed threatens goodness, the fight for Rosie's Diner. It named Robert Carril. It named his development company. It detailed the rent hike, the timing, and the community's response. It painted him as the man who was trying to kill the best thing that had happened to Pittsburgh all year. Carril's reputation, built over decades of respectable business, was now toxic. On Friday morning, just before the lunch rush, Carril's gray BMW squealed into the parking lot. He stormed out of the car, his face a mask of purple apoplectic rage. He was waving a copy of the Post-Gazette editorial. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared, pushing past a startled customer at the door. "You, Bennett, you're ruining me." He marched toward the counter, jabbing the newspaper at Clara. "You think you can just slander me in the press? I'll sue you. I'll sue this whole dump. He stopped short. Marcus and Tony had risen from their booth, not in a rush, but with a deliberate, unhurried calm. They stood between Carril and Clara, two very different kinds of immovable objects. "Mr. Carril," Tony said, his voice smooth, polite, and utterly deadly. "I'd lower your voice. You're upsetting the customers." "You!" Carril sputtered, recognizing Tony from the office. "You're behind this petition, this media circus." "We're just exercising our First Amendment rights," Tony said, adjusting his glasses. He held up a clipboard. "And speaking of, the petition just hit 3,847 signatures, a copy of which we have already sent to the zoning board, along with a formal petition to investigate you for landlord harassment." Carril's face went from purple to a sickly pale. "Harassment?" "That's right," Tony continued, his voice dropping. "And my associates," he gestured vaguely to the bikers in the room, and by extension the ones in the parking lot, "are currently researching every other property you own, every lease, every tenant. We're looking for a pattern, and when we find it, we'll be organizing all of your tenants. I wonder how many of them would like to join a class-action lawsuit." Carril stared, his mouth opening and closing. He was trapped. The media, the law, and the silent physical presence of the bikers had him cornered. He was a man who operated in the shadows of contracts, and they had dragged him into the spotlight and started reading the fine print of his entire life. He looked at Clara, his eyes filled with a venomous hatred. He looked at Marcus, who just stared back, unblinking. He looked at Tony, who smiled, a thin, lawyerly smile. He broke. "Fine," he shouted, his voice cracking. He threw the newspaper onto the floor. "Fine, you want it? You can have it. I'm selling. I'm selling the property. I'll be rid of this whole cursed place. I'll be rid of you." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the bell jangled violently. The diner fell silent. Jennifer let out a long, shaky breath. Clara gripped the counter, her knuckles white. They had won. They'd beaten him. She looked at Mr. Patterson, who was standing by the office door, his face pale and stunned. He looked back at her, his eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. Clara and Mr. Patterson looked at each other, stunned. They won the battle, but now what? They didn't have the money to buy it. "He'll sell," Mr. Patterson said, sinking into a booth, his face ashen. "But he'll sell to Hutchkins. We just did his dirty work for him." The brief, violent surge of triumph in the diner evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, crushing silence. Carril's parting shot had hit its mark. They had driven him off, yes, but they had driven him straight into the arms of the other, more dangerous villain. Hutchkins, the developer, with his $500,000 offer. They hadn't saved the diner. They had just accelerated its execution. Clara felt the floor drop out from under her. "He's right," she whispered, leaning against the counter. All that work, the petition, the media, the 24-hour guard, all for nothing. Hutchkins would buy the building, and the first thing he'd do was evict them, tear it all down, and build his soulless, franchised Clara Bennett Diner. The thought made her physically ill. Mr. Patterson buried his face in his hands. He'll take the $500,000 from Hutchkins. We can't compete with that. We don't have that kind of money. Marcus, who had been standing by the door watching Kareel's car speed away, turned back. His face was calm, analytical. He walked over to the booth and sat down across from Mr. Patterson. Tony followed, taking a seat beside him. "How much is the property worth?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet, cutting through the despair. "What does it matter?" Mr. Patterson said, his voice muffled. "Hutchkins offered $500,000. "It matters," Tony insisted, pulling out his laptop. He typed for a moment, pulling up the county assessment records Reese had gathered. "The official county-assessed value for tax purposes is $380,000. That's land and building. Hutchkins's offer is significantly over market value. He's not buying the property, he's buying the brand you all built. He'll offer Karele $400,000, $500,000, whatever it takes to make this go away." "So that's it," Jennifer said, her eyes filling with tears. "We lost." "No," Marcus said. He shook his head, a slow, certain movement. "Hutchkins won't have to." He pulled out his phone. He didn't text this time. He made a call. He hit a number on his favorites list and put it on speaker for the table to hear. It rang twice. "Yeah," a gruff voice answered. "Jake, it's Marcus. I'm here with Tony and the diner owners." "Heard you had a situation," the voice on the phone said. "Landlord's a problem?" "Was," Marcus said. "We just backed him into a corner. He's selling." "So Hutchkins gets it." "No," Marcus said. "We're buying it. The property. We're taking it off the market. I need to open the Brotherhood Fund." There was a pause on the other end. "The whole property? That's a capital expense, Marcus. What's the number?" $380, Tony said, leaning toward the phone. $380,000. That's the assessed value. We offer that cash 30-day close. He'll take it. It's clean, quiet, and he saves face. $380, the voice on the phone mulled. "We've got the donations that have been pouring in. What's the tally on that, Danny?" Another voice murmured in the background. "Looks like the Save Rosie's trust we set up has hit. $127,843 from all over the country." Clara's head snapped up. She had seen the donations, the small $5 and $10 gifts, but she had no idea it had reached that kind of number. $127, Marcus confirmed. "The Brotherhood Fund will cover the rest. $253,000. This diner, it's become a symbol, Jake. It's more than just a stop. It's where this whole new network started. We protect it. We make it permanent." Another pause. Then, "All right, it's a solid investment in the community. You're authorized. Have Tony draw up the offer. The funds will be in an escrow account by Monday morning. Buy the diner, Marcus. Buy it for the girl." The line went dead. Clara stared at the phone. She looked at Marcus. I don't understand. The Brotherhood Fund? You just have $250,000? "It's not my money, Clara," Marcus said, his voice gentle. "The Iron Hawks and the other clubs in our network, we're a national organization. We have businesses. We have investments. We have a fund set aside for exactly this, taking care of our own, protecting our family. We're buying it. For you." "For me?" Clara felt dizzy. This was moving too fast. I can't accept that. It's too much." "You're not accepting it," Mr. Patterson said. He'd sat up, his face pale, but his eyes were clear for the first time in weeks. He looked at Clara, not as an employee, but as an equal. "I'm 62 years old, Clara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was planning to retire in a few years anyway. I was going to sell this place to pay off my debts and live on whatever was left. I was defeated. Then you and this, he gestured to Marcus. You showed me what this place really means, what my father built. He slid out of the booth and stood in front of her. I don't want to just save this diner. I want it to thrive. I want it to be the beacon everyone says it is. But I can't do that alone. I'm an old man. I need a partner. He held out his worn, calloused hand. Clara, I want to make you a co-owner. Equal partnership, 50-50. We use the donations you inspired and the Brotherhood's investment to buy this property together. We run it together. Clara stared at his outstretched hand. Co-owner. Her, Clara Bennett, the broke waitress who couldn't pay her rent. She looked at Marcus, who was smiling, a real, proud smile. She looked at Tony, who was already typing up the legal framework for the partnership. She looked at Jennifer, who was openly sobbing with joy. Her hand, which had trembled on the deadbolt of the door that first night, was steady as she put it in his. Yes, she said, her voice shaking but firm. Yes, Mr. Patterson, I want that. Then let's go buy our diner, he said. The meeting with Robert Carril was scheduled for the following Tuesday at his lawyer's downtown Pittsburgh office. The building was all glass and steel, a monument to the kind of cold, corporate power that had almost crushed them. Clara had never felt so small, or so strong. She wore her best black pants and a clean white blouse, but over it, she wore the Ironhawks jacket Marcus had gifted her weeks ago. Mr. Patterson wore his only suit. Flanking them were Marcus and Tony, both in full Ironhawks leather, looking completely undaunted. Carril was already in the conference room with his two lawyers. He looked older, smaller, the lines around his mouth carved deep with stress and public humiliation. When he saw Marcus and Tony, his face tightened, but he said nothing. Mr. Patterson, Miss Bennett, his lawyer said stiffly. We're here to discuss the terms of a potential sale. My client is considering a very generous offer from the Hutchkins Group. No, he's not, Tony said, taking the lead. He slid a single leather-bound folder across the massive mahogany table. Your client is going to accept our offer. $380,000, the full assessed market value. Cash. Closing in 30 days. No contingencies. Carrili's lawyer opened the folder. His eyebrows shot up. He hadn't expected them to have the money. He'd expected a plea, a negotiation. He hadn't expected a check. This is highly irregular. It's a clean sale, Tony said. Take it or don't. But understand this. He leaned forward. If you refuse, we will take this public. Greedy landlord refuses fair market offer from community fund. We'll turn it into another story. We'll raise the remaining funds publicly, and we will buy this building. Your client's reputation is in tatters, sir. This is his one and only chance to take a fair price and exit with a shred of dignity. Carril stared at the folder. He looked at Clara, his eyes filled with a bitter, defeated hatred. He looked at Marcus, who just stared back, unblinking. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. Carril listened, his jaw tightening, then closed his eyes briefly. Fine, he said, his voice a rasp. I'll sell. Get me the papers. Oi. For the next hour, they signed. Carril signed. Mr. Patterson signed. And then they handed the pen to Clara. Her hand was shaking as she wrote her name on the thick, official document. Clara Marie Bennett, co-owner. It was the most terrifying, most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The renovation began the day after the property transferred. The diner was closed for 2 weeks. But the work wasn't done by a hired crew. It was done by the Brotherhood. A convoy of pickup trucks and vans had arrived, filled with bikers in work clothes, carrying toolboxes, lumber, and equipment. Pete, a biker from a Maryland club who ran his own construction company, directed the Brotherhood build. Labor was free. Materials were donated from clubs in 6 states. They gutted the interior, preserving the history, the original counter, the booth where Mr. Patterson had proposed to his wife, but upgrading everything. New booths, new floors, an expanded modern kitchen for Ray, a beautiful outdoor patio with picnic tables and string lights. Clara, Jennifer, and Ray worked from a food truck Marcus had parked in the lot, serving free coffee and sandwiches to the rotating crews of workers. It was organized, joyous chaos. The grand reopening was scheduled for a Saturday, exactly 5 weeks after that first stormy night. Clara had expected a crowd. She had not expected this. By 9 a.m., the parking lot was a sea of motorcycles. Not 80, not 100. It looked like 1,000. The Brotherhood Rally banner hung between 2 new light poles. The local news was there. The mayor of White Oak was there. And at the front of the crowd, standing by the new, polished front door, were the original 10 bikers from that stormy night, all of them grinning from ear to ear. At 10 a.m., Marcus stood on the new patio with a microphone. 5 weeks ago, he boomed, his voice carrying over the crowd, a storm brought 10 of us to this diner. 1 woman saw us as humans and opened her door. Today, we reopen this diner as a symbol of what happens when kindness meets brotherhood. The crowd roared. Clara Bennett, get up here. Jennifer and Mr. Patterson pushed her forward. The crowd parted, and Clara walked up to the patio, her legs shaking, her Iron Hawks jacket zipped up over a new dress. Marcus turned to her, his face serious. On behalf of every club here today, we present you with this. He handed her a large framed certificate. It was a certificate of protection, recognizing Rosie's Diner as protected ground, signed by the presidents of 30 different motorcycle clubs. Then Danny, the young biker from that first night, stepped forward. He was holding a custom leather jacket, identical to Marcus's, but smaller. On the back was the Iron Hawks logo, and below it, stitched in beautiful silver thread, Rosie's Diner, official Iron Hawks stop, Estuary 2025. Welcome to the family, sister, Marcus said, holding the jacket open for her. Clara slipped her arms into the jacket, the leather warm and heavy, a profound weight of belonging. She turned to the crowd, tears streaming down her face, and took the microphone. Clara stood on the small stage at the rally, overlooking a sea of 1,000 bikers and locals. She was holding the deed to the diner, her name printed on it. 3 weeks ago, she said, her voice trembling but strong. I was a waitress who was scared to unlock a door. You all showed me that family isn't about blood, it's about showing up. She held up the deed. As long as I'm here, this diner will always have a door open for you, for all of you, to family. The crowd roared, to family. Clara looks at the new, permanent sign, glowing steady and bright. The storm had passed. The diner was theirs. And Clara Bennett, co-owner, surrounded by her family of 999 bikers, was finally home. And so the storm passes, leaving a quiet, steady dawn in its wake. It is difficult to believe that this new, permanent light began with a single, trembling act in the darkest part of the night. We first met Clara Bennett as a ghost in her own life, a young woman worn down to a nub by a system that demanded everything and gave back $17.63. She was a symbol of the quiet desperation that so many feel, trapped in a temporary life that has become a permanent, exhausting sentence. The flickering neon sign over Rosie's Diner was not just a failing piece of equipment. It was a chilling metaphor for her dying hope. She was invisible to the world, just another cog in the machine. Her apron was frayed, just like her spirit. She expected nothing from the world, and generally received even less. Into this despair, a different kind of storm arrived. 10 desperate men, soaked, cold, and shivering, bearing the heavy stereotypes of a society that had already judged them. Every instinct, every warning her mother had ever given her, screamed to keep the deadbolt locked. The smart thing, the safe thing, the policy, would have been to point at the closed sign and let the storm have them. But Clara's quiet strength, her fundamental, unshakable dignity, resided in a place deeper than her fear. She did not see bikers. She saw human beings who were cold. In that moment, she made a choice that would send ripples across a continent. "I am not charging for basic human decency," she said, and with those words, she didn't just pour coffee. She lit a beacon. She reminded us that empathy is not a transaction. It is a moral necessity. Her resilience was not loud. It was the stubborn, quiet endurance of a single flame, refusing to be extinguished by the wind. She wasn't trying to be a hero. She was just trying to be human. This simple, profound act of seeing another's humanity, of choosing respect over suspicion, is where our entire story truly began. It was a testament to the fact that the most powerful revolutions often start not with a shout, but with the quiet click of an unlocked door. Of course, in our world, no good deed goes unpunished for long. The story of Rosie's Diner could have ended with a full tip jar and a fixed sign, a simple, heartwarming tale of kindness reciprocated. But the world we live in is more complex, and often far more predatory. Clara's sudden, viral success, the warm light from her beacon, did not just attract those seeking warmth, it attracted sharks. Robert Carrill and Derek Hutchkins were not mere villains. They were representatives of a systemic bias, the cold, calculating greed that all too often disguises itself as policy or good business. This is the core moral lesson of our story. We learned the chilling difference between a lease agreement and human decency, between fair market value and fundamental fairness. Carrile, with his dreaded Section 12B, represented the tyranny of the fine print. The insidious way paper and policy can be weaponized to crush the vulnerable the moment they show signs of success. Hutchkins represented the next, more dangerous step. The corporate machine that sees a community's soul not as something to be cherished, but as a brand to be purchased, franchised, and hollowed out. They sought to punish Clara's success, to extract value from her kindness, to prove that in the end, money and power always win. The conflict shifted from one woman's struggle against poverty to a community's desperate fight for its own heart. The villains brought contracts, lawyers, and finally, the naked threat of physical intimidation. They believed they were attacking a lone, tired waitress. They believed she was weak, isolated, and an easy target. They fundamentally misunderstood where her true power lay. They saw a run-down dump of a diner. They failed to see the fortress it was rapidly becoming. This is the great test of our times, the ongoing clash between transactional, disposable relationships and deep communal bonds. The antagonists operated on a logic of pure profit and loss. They could not comprehend a logic based on loyalty, honor, and brotherhood. This systemic prejudice, the arrogant belief that the respectable man in the suit holds all the cards, was about to be turned decisively on its head. The true cathartic climax of our story was not the threat. It was the response. When those two enforcers walked into the diner to intimidate a woman they believed was alone. They were walking into the most protected building in the state of Pennsylvania. The click, click, click of that emergency text was the sound of a new, more powerful system being activated. The Wall of Brotherhood, that silent, disciplined army of 80 bikers, was one of the most powerful images of allyship we have ever seen. This is the second great lesson. The immense courage it takes to confront not just a person, but a biased system. The world had stereotyped these men as trouble, the very people Clara was warned against her entire life. Yet, it was the respectable men in suits who brought the threats, and it was the trouble who brought the protection. The story masterfully revealed that the Ironhawks were not a gang. They were a community, a parallel system built on loyalty, with their own lawyers, their own real estate experts, and their own national brotherhood fund. They met the cold, impersonal power of policy with the fierce, personal, and organized power of a chosen family. They did not just fight the system of greed. They bought it. The catharsis of that final act, the certified check for $380,000, the signing of the deed, was more than just a legal victory. It was the complete and total restoration of justice. It was proof that a community, united in purpose, can stand against the predators. It was the ultimate validation of Clara's quiet dignity. She didn't just get to keep her job, she became the owner of her destiny. The broke waitress who couldn't afford her rent now held the deed to the entire building. The woman who was utterly alone was now the sister to 1,000 brothers. The 999 bikers who came to that final rally were not just celebrating a diner, they were celebrating an idea. That kindness is a strength, that loyalty is a currency, and that respect is the only foundation worth building on. The sign, glowing steady and bright, was no longer a symbol of dying hope. It was a permanent landmark to what is possible. In the end, this story reminds us of a simple, enduring truth. The world will always present us with storms. It will always have its Careels and its Hutchkins, those who see vulnerability as an opportunity for exploitation. But the story of Clara Bennett is a powerful reminder that we are not defined by the storms we face, but by our choice to open the door. We learn that true strength is not the power to intimidate, but the courage to be kind. We see that the systems of greed are brittle, and they shatter when met with the unbreakable bonds of true community. The specifics of the struggle may change, but the philosophy remains. Dignity is not something given by others, but something we possess, and it is our duty to protect it in ourselves and in everyone we meet. We hope this story of resilience, justice, and unlikely family has touched your heart as much as it has ours. If you found value in Clara's journey, please let us know by leaving the number 1 in the comments below. And to hear more stories that champion the human spirit, be sure to subscribe to our channel and join our community.